Good evening, Patriots. Constitution Vet here, and welcome to a brand new video to a new series. This series is the book analysis playlist, whatever. As you can tell, it's a new setting again. I apologize for moving settings. It's just how it is at the moment. I'm done teaching students for the semester, so the next the next good amount of videos you're going to see will be coming from this area right here. And so I hope this works out pretty well. It looks like the video quality is pretty good, so we'll just go with that. If I need to go back to my classroom, I'll be going back to get some more books. But tonight, we're going to dive into a book that I think is very relevant to what's going on in our world right now, especially in our nation. So I'm going to get right to it. And again, to be clear, I'm not going to read the entire book. And I'm not going to do an in-depth book review. What this series will focus on is a book analysis. Basically, I'm going to highlight key points to various books. And in my view, these key points basically cement the main goal that the author is trying to make, again, in my perspective. So without any further ado, let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow patriots, tonight we're going to dive into the Gulag Archipelago. That's right, we're diving into this one tonight. So as you can tell, this is a pretty thick book. We're not going to read the entire thing, as I stated. However, as you can tell, there are a few tabs here. Tonight, we're going to look at one of the tabs. Before I do that, we got to set up some context. That way, you can get a better understanding of what the heck's going on in this writing. So let's start with a little activity, shall we? Let's log on to Amazon.com. And let's focus on the theme of symbolism, imagery. When you type in certain things in Amazon, what comes up? Well, let's find out together, shall we? So when you log into Amazon and you type in this word, let's see what happens. Interesting. So the first shirt that comes up is not the tilted version. It's the horizontal version. Little side fun fact, the horizontal version actually derives from Hinduism. And last time I checked, I believe represents each path of reincarnation after you die. But that's pretty much it. Now, this is Amazon, right? Freedom of speech, right? So we should be able to find some shirt with the tilted version, right? Now, to be fair, I'm not supporting what that version stands for. But again, I'm just curious to see what comes up. I have no idea what these are. You know, if you are an anime fan, you probably know more than I do. But let's just keep scrolling, see what happens. Nope, nothing. Oh, this is interesting. So we have another Buddhist example of the horizontal version. I don't know why Nordic mythology is tied to this, but whatever. This is interesting. Okay, still no. Obviously, you have this one, clearly. So what else? Nope. Okay, you got a book, I believe. Yeah, a book. That's fair. No, but we're looking for a t-shirt. There has to be a t-shirt with the tilted version of it, right? No. A button with an X with a big cross through it. Okay, sure. Big slash. I love my wife. Yeah, because that obviously correlates with that search. Oh, whatever. Nope. Stamp. That's actually pretty interesting. Nope. Whatever this is, I don't know. On phone covers, yeah, because this obviously correlates with that search. So there's nothing here. Interesting. So now, let's type in another search. We've clearly seen that there's nothing on the internet, at least on Amazon. There's nothing you can buy with that tilted image on it. Okay, so what happens if we type in this? Oh, no, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Look at this. Still watching you. Let's get the party started. Interesting. So this is okay. Obviously, you gotta have the bears, right? Oh, right. That's okay. Right. Oh, even better. Yeah, because that makes historical sense. Now, to be fair, I do have a dark sense of humor, but yeah, this is historically accurate. That's not historically accurate. Anyways, let's continue. I mean, clearly, this is okay. This symbol, this imagery, totally fine, no problem. So you can use capitalism to buy shirts that celebrate the hammer and sickle. Gotcha. But you can't use capitalism to buy a shirt with the tilted image that we previously looked at. That's strange. That's very strange. So as we go through tonight's video, remember that. Remember that it's totally fine to buy a shirt with the hammer and sickle, but it's not okay to buy a shirt with the other image. Just hold on to that. Okay, we'll come back to that later. So the Gulag Archipelago. What's it all about? How can I best paraphrase the fundamental point of this epic book in a clear and concise way? To begin, we're going to look at a scholarly perspective, a point of view from someone who has considerable more years dealing with this topic than I have. Again, this is to set a good foundation for this video.
One thing you said reminded me of students today. And how do they react to Solzhenitsyn when they read him? I'll tell you how they react when they read the Gulag. We have 100 pages of it in the Solzhenitsyn reader, and I have the separate abridgment. I've taught it many times. The 100 pages in the reader is my abridgment of the abridgment. That part they left to me to do. You know, why not? Mahoney didn't do that. I did that part. And I have it, let's say, in an interim class when they write journals. Instead of any exams, they just write a journal. And over and over, the refrain will come, why didn't they tell us this? I never heard this from my teachers. I thought I was getting a good high school education. We studied history. We studied the World War II. We studied the Cold War. I never heard about the Gulag. I heard about the Holocaust.
Yeah, right.
And right. I ask students, does a number come to your mind? Never mind, this isn't a trick question. It may be right, the right number and wrong number, but I think for many of you who've heard something, a number comes to your mind. 6 million? I say, yeah, that's the number. Anybody else here? Oh, the hands go up all over. After they have found out what the Gulag is, I ask, does any number come to your mind? This is before they're doing the reading and preparing them. Say, what would you say if I said 66 million?
Let that sink in for a second. The average numerical deaths from the Holocaust, which was a horrific time in human history, 6 million. Okay. Now, chew on the numerical deaths of 66 million. 66 million deaths in the Soviet Union. 66 million deaths. And this is okay for 1999. 66 million deaths. And this is okay. 66 million deaths. And all this is totally fine. No problem. Think about that for a second. Our society, this capitalistic, democracy-loving, liberty-loving society, freedom-loving society, will not allow you to purchase any t-shirt with the tilted image of Nazi Germany. But this same country, this same capitalistic business will let you buy tons of shirts with the hammer and sickle, the image of the Soviet Union, the same thing that caused the deaths of 66 million people. Oh, that's okay. That's fine. Now that we have the foundation set, let's dive into this book. Let's see what Alexander Solzhenitsyn actually said. To give you some background to this guy, he was a soldier in the Soviet Union, and then he was thrown into the Gulag system. Now, the reason why it's called the Gulag Archipelago, it's a metaphorical phrase. Geographically speaking, archipelago is like a chain of islands, pretty much. But instead of islands, the Gulag system, the Gulag network in the Soviet Union resembled a chain of islands. Now, this is the cover of the book that I have. But here's the map. Take a good look at this for a second. Every single tower here represents a gulag, the destructive labor camps, who were just as horrific as the German concentration camps. Let me zoom in for a second. There's Moscow. These represent railroads built by the Gulag inmates. This represents canals built by the Gulag inmates. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This is just half of the map. Here's the second half. As you've probably noticed, this video is going to have a lot of quiet pauses because I really need you to stop and chew on this. Think about this and go back to what we did at the beginning of the video. 66 million deaths. Countless camps. Just as horrific as the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And yet, this system, this network, this archipelago lasted much longer. But for some reason, the hammer and sickle, the Soviet Union, that imagery is totally fine within our modern day culture, totally acceptable. So we've seen these symbolistic data, the hypocrisy between the two symbols that we use in today's society. We then looked at the numerical data and the shocking contrast to topics that is not covered as it should be in typical schools. Then we looked at the geographical data, showing you what the Gulag Archipelago actually looked like. This next part is going to look at the actual words written by Solzhenitsyn. Now this is on page 43 in the chapter entitled The Interrogation. The proofs of guilt were relative, approximate. The interrogator could find them, even when there was no evidence. no witnesses, without leaving his office, basing his conclusions not only on his own intellect, but also on his party sensitivity, his moral forces. In other words, the superiority of someone who has slept well, has been well fed, and has not been beaten up, and on his character, his willingness to apply cruelty. So that can be a lot to take in. So let's break this down together. The proofs of guilt were what? Relative. What does that mean? Does that mean evidence that's cold, hard, and factual? No. The proof of guilt was relative, approximate. Time out for a second. This means that anyone could be arrested and interrogated for any reason, even when there wasn't any evidence. This is the historical context. During the Soviet Union, if you were suspected of disloyalty or treason, or if you were not part of the good people, such as the Ukrainians and the Lithuanians, if you were part of those groups, those identities, you were arrested, you were silenced, you were interrogated, you were questioned. You could have done nothing wrong. You could be legitimately innocent. Didn't matter. If the agents of the state, the ruling power, didn't like you, you were arrested and tortured. In fact, this same chapter covers over 30 methods of torture. Like legit, I'm looking at it right now. So if you want to learn different torture techniques that the Soviets used, get this book. But let's move on. The proof of guilt was relative, approximate. Even when there is no evidence, no witnesses, they can still charge you. They can still question you. They can still interrogate you. Well, that sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? So that I won't get kicked off by the overlords of this arena, I'm going to let you do your own research on what I'm talking about. But think about that for a second. In the Soviet Union, the interrogators needed no proof. They didn't need evidence. As long as they felt you were their enemy, that's all they needed. Building upon their own intellect, stroking their ego, their party sensitivity, their moral forces. I'm holier than thou. Rules for thee, but not for me. If you've been paying attention, what's been happening within the past year is not new. It's already happened. Every single time there has been identity politics. Every single time there has been someone accused of something with no evidence, none. Every single time there has been a movement based off of moral forces and not statistical data. Every single time someone was made to feel guilty off of relative emotions and feelings. Those four things, brace yourself, are Soviet tactics. Don't take my word for it. This is coming straight from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a guy who endured the horrors of the Gulag Archipelago. Those four things are literally the same thing that the Soviets did to anyone who was not the right kind of person. Anyone who was deemed as the enemy. But guess what? This has already happened in American history. Whenever you cover the Cold War in classrooms or homeschooling, there's a key phrase known as the Red Scare. And this is an actual thing that happened in US history. After World War II, Americans were dominated by fear. Fear of what? Fear of communism, the evil commies. Now, to be fair, were there communist spies in America? Yeah, there were, but not to the degree that we were led to believe. Now, the Red Scare culture boils down to this. You ready? If you did not fall in line with the narrative, if you did not agree with the narrative, if you were different in any way, if you countered the narrative, you were deemed a communist. And what happened when you were labeled a communist in the late 40s, 50s, and 60s? What happened? You were blacklisted. You were silenced. You were canceled. So, in my description below, there's a link to a TED Talk video that does a fantastic job at illustrating McCarthyism and the Red Scare. Below that is another video by the channel named Gothics. Now, the girl who runs Gothics is fantastic. I respect her immensely. What's so great about her channel is she does not fit the narrative. She doesn't fit the mold that these modern day Soviets have created. She thinks for herself. And the video I have linked there is a beautiful summation of cancel culture. She does a great job at tying history to modern day. So what's the point? Why should we read more of Solzhenitsyn? Why is it so important right now? The Red Scare that happened in America, where people were questioned, were silenced, were blacklisted because they didn't agree with the narrative, it's happening again. Today it's known as cancel culture. If you don't agree with the narrative, you're doxxed, you're canceled, you're silenced. In the Soviet Union, the same thing happened. If you do not agree with the narrative, if you were deemed as the enemy, the other, the periphery, the villain, you weren't just silenced, you were literally arrested in the middle of the night. You were thrown into a cell. You were interrogated, even without proof, without evidence. It didn't matter. If the agents of the state felt you were guilty, that's all they needed. So, what can we take from this? How can we apply this to our day-to-day life? Well, if you know anyone in your life that embraces the hammer and sickle imagery, not if you know anyone in your life who embraces the hammer and sickle imagery, not as making fun of it, not as like a meme, not that, but someone who seriously believes that this is the right path to a so-called utopia, get away from them as soon as possible, because they'll make your life a living hell. If you know anyone who agrees with the idea of making a list of names, call them out for what they are. They are modern day Soviets. Even better, if you meet someone who truly believes that Marx was a really good guy, that Lenin and Stalin, oh, they had it right. They knew what they were doing. If you meet someone like that, again, give them a chance to air their views. Get them a cup of coffee, hear them out, and then ask them this simple question. I wonder what people from Ukraine think about that. And ask them and see what their response is. Moral of the story. The work of Solzhenitsyn helped bring down the Soviet Union. His work showed the world what was really going on under the Iron Curtain. We truly want to fight for freedom and liberty, and you need to understand how the villain operates. You need to understand the history behind cancel culture. Cancel culture is literally the Red Scare. It's the same thing. All that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Again, I know it was a little bit different. The ambiance, the feel was different, but I really wanted to focus on just how important this book is. And everyone who is subscribed to my channel, please get this book, start reading it, because you will be horrified at how many similarities there are to modern day. On that note, have a great night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you can, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you'd like to donate, I would greatly appreciate that. That's all I have for tonight, Patriots. Never surrender, never submit. This is Constitution Vet signing out.